Yeah, no problem. All right, I am now recording. So what I want to do with you guys today is just give you a demo on how to interact with iLab. You have been identified as users that some of Penn State's cores are basically intending to have as customers. So iLab is basically going to allow you to log in, create reservations on pieces of equipment, and submit project requests if maybe you have a core that you would typically submit samples to. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen with you. Are you able to see it?
Not yet. Oh, there it is.
All right,
Okay.
perfect. Excellent. So this, what you're seeing right here, this is an external landing page of a core facility at iLab. These core, these external landing pages will generally have some information about the core. So if you maybe are interested in their hours, or they might have some links and resources here for you, you can always look at this information. Up in the top right corner, you'll see there is a green login button. For those that already have iLab accounts. There is a blue sign up button for those that don't. Both of these options, you're going to see there's a pop-up that basically asks whether or not you're internal to Penn State. So you guys as Penn State users would be able to click this here link, and it's going to take you to an authentication page where you can put in your Penn State credentials. I can't actually show you logging in from this portion because I don't have Penn State credentials myself. But what is going to happen is it's going to ask you, as far as registering, some general information, your email address. It'll ask you to identify your PI. Your PI will then be able to give you access to accounts or to any cost centers that you might be able to use for your work. If you're just logging in, you already have an account. Once you put in your Penn State credentials and click that login button, you'll be good to go. It routes you right back to iLab. So this tab I've actually logged in as a test user. You can see it says Mary Researcher up in the top right-hand corner. And I've landed on this About tab that looks really, really similar to that external landing page that we just came from. So this tab's going to be a direct mirror of that information. Once you log in, if you need to come in and check, maybe you want some access to those resources, you can easily come to this tab to get to those. I'm going to jump to this Equipment tab now. So this Equipment tab, depending on what your core offers, they may or may not have this tab. You're going to see this tab for any core that offers equipment that you're able to come in and schedule on. So for example, if I wanted to create a reservation on one of these NanoFab instruments here, I'm going to use the C spinner. I can click on this View Schedule button over on the right-hand side. It's going to take me into the calendar interface. So you can see I've got a lot of things going on in this calendar. This is a busy little instrument here. We have several instances that are already booked on this particular resource. We have a red dotted line. This is actually indicating the current day and time that we're in. And if I want to create a reservation for later on in this afternoon, I simply just have to click and drag. Oh, oops, this one has some restrictions, so it looks like I have to do it at least 7 hours in advance. So let's do this for tomorrow instead. There we go. So this reservation detail screen is going to give you some information here. You can see up in the top left, there is an event notes section. So if there's something important I want the core to know about my reservation, I can put that in and decide whether or not I'm okay with it being visible to anyone, or maybe it's a little bit more sensitive and I only want it visible to myself and the core staff. This time section is the time that we clicked and dragged. If maybe we let go a little bit too early, I wanted to go to 10:45, I can click on this little yellow pencil over on the right here. I can then select that end time, adjust it to 10:45, and then click that little green check mark button to save my changes. And you're going to see that applies to this use and cost of reservation section. So I'm now seeing 9 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. here. On this particular calendar, I only have one option. I can do the assisted use option, Some calendars you'll see have multiple availabilities. So maybe the core offers training on this resource and they have a assisted use for $30 an hour, but they also offer self-use at $15 an hour. So you could see multiple usage types here depending on whether you're trained or untrained. This payment information section. Now, my test user here is external, so this is going to look a little bit different for you guys. I actually prefer the way that it's going to look for you. What this is going to do is you're going to actually have a drop-down box here that will have a list of all of your valid accounts or cost centers, so you can select the appropriate one for your work. Once it's no longer valid, it won't show up in that drop-down, so you won't have a huge long list that you're sorting through trying to find the appropriate fund. And then the last thing I want to point out is up in the top right, some of these calendars could have forms associated with them. So if perhaps the core wants to know, how many samples you're submitting, or if maybe there's a certain question that they would typically ask, they might be tied to this reservation. And if you see a red star next to it, that's going to indicate that that is a required field that you have to fill out before you can save your reservation. I'm going to go down to this Save Reservation button on the left-hand corner here with the little floppy disk icon. Okay. We can see my new event is showing up on the calendar. Because this one requires core approval, it is in orange and it does have that pending core approval. Not all calendars require core approval, so it might be that you don't ever see that. Maybe they let you just schedule and hit the ground running, or maybe they require approval for assisted use but not for self-use, so it really could depend per core. You can see while I hover over that event note that we added, that testing 1, 2, 3 does show up in the little pop-up with a warning icon to really grab our attention next to it. And there are a couple of things that we can do to actually adjust this reservation directly from this interface. So one of them, if I hover over the bottom here, you're going to see two little arrows, and I can click and drag to either extend or shorten my reservation. The other thing that I can do is hover over the time at the top. I get a little hand, and I can click and drag to move him to a different time or even a different day. When I let go, he will jump back for a second while the system processes, but then he'll settle down where we pulled him over to. And then the last thing that I want to point out here is there is a Legends and Help button. So if you're not sure what all these colors mean, why your event is in orange, for example, you can use that Legends and Help to pull that information up. I'm going to go ahead and click this Return to Schedules tab. This is going to take us back to that Equipment tab. All right, so if we needed to make further reservations, maybe we wanted to schedule on Schedule A, for example, we would be able to come in and do that. I'm going to go ahead and move to this Request Services tab now. So this Request Services is where cores that maybe offer you to submit your samples and they'll run them for you, for example. That's the majority of where that action is going to happen here. They could have multiple project requests in this top section. So maybe we have sample submission requests and then we have a data analysis request, for example. This top section, I like to kind of describe this as your value meal. This can consist of multiple services. So maybe project 1, I have service A, B, and C to make up my custom project. This second portion on this page, you can kind of think of these as your a la carte items. So these are going to be those billable services that we will use to build up those custom projects up at the top. So we can see those. We've got a couple different offerings down here as far as what the core offers. And I want to actually initiate this second project. So I'm ready to go ahead and submit work to the core. I want to get the ball rolling. I'm going to click this Request Service button over on the right-hand side. Okay. So these project requests most likely will include some kind of form. The form will vary based on what the core needs to know about your project that you're submitting. So in this one, you're going to see actually based off of your choices, you might see different fields populate here. Again, we have those red stars that indicate required fields. Okay. And I'm just going to skip some of these and just go for the required fields one. You can see on some of these, if I select other, I'm going to have to indicate what that other is. All right. And then down here, you can see by default, we've had these two services, Service A from Group 1 and Service A from Group 2 are added by default. Depending on how on the core you're working with, they might have these services added by default, or they might actually build up your project kind of as needed. So maybe there aren't any services added off the bat, but they're going to talk to you and then they're going to build up that custom quote based on your project's needs. If there are services added by default here, you will see under the cost section, a quote will generate based off of those line items up above. And then finally, payment information section, really similar to what we saw on that reservations page. Again, you as internal users will get that drop down with the valid account and cost centers. And I'm going to go ahead and click this Submit Request to Core. We're automatically going to get navigated over to the next tab called View My Requests. So this will keep a queue of any of your requests here. You can see so far, this is the first time I'm working with this core, so I only have one request here. If I had kind of been working with them over the course of several months and submitted several projects, I would see a bar here for each one of these projects. That status column will give you, and it looks like I maybe forgot to fill out a required field because that didn't submit. I did. I skipped a required field. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Let's try that again. There we go. Perfect. So this status column is kind of giving us a down low of where we're at with our projects. So I've just submitted this one to the core. I can see I'm waiting for them to log in. They'll be able to look over my form that I filled out and either agree or disagree if maybe I've accidentally asked for something that they don't do. If the core initiates the request on your behalf, this is going to say waiting for researcher to agree, and you will have an agree or disagree button just the same way that they would, and you'd be able to look that over and be like, yep, that's my project. I'm ready to move forward on that guy. To view any of your project details, you can use this blue triangle over on the left-hand side to toggle open that information. You can see that form that we previously filled out displays here, and then we see those line items down below. This particular core also uses milestones, so we can see a couple milestones have been added to kind of capture where they're at in the phase of the project. And based on whether the core staff, or when the core staff updates it, this not started could say either started or finished to indicate where they're at with that project. There is a comment section down here where you can keep a thread of communications with the core. If you click this add comment link, we're going to see a little pop-up. We are able to also select maybe I want to include my financial manager or my PI in this communication. I can go ahead and put my message in here. This will by default send you a copy of this email. If you don't want to get that, you can always deselect that guy. Then when I click send message, I'll get a pop-up letting me know that message has been sent. And it's going to show up in that comment section with the day and time stamp. So you'll be able to come back here and reference those discussions. This add comment link, you can either use that link, or there is a little communications bubble up here. Works the exact same way. It's going to look the exact same way in which you can go ahead and select the financial manager or the PI. There is an attachments and URL section here as well. So maybe the core used this comment section to ask you for a specific document to help them with your project, or you had maybe they want you to put a copy of your IRB approval. Anything really along those lines, you can use this add attachments, or if it's housed on a separate site, you can use the add URL to actually link those here. And then one of the things that you'll notice throughout the site is there are these filters on the left-hand side. So if you have a bunch of different projects here and you want to go in and maybe look at a specific one, you can use these to say, look at a date, maybe you know when you initiated, or I only want to see the ones that I used account number 1234 on, those kind of things you can filter through. And then the last thing I want to point out here is this tab does default to active requests, but if maybe you've had a completed one in the past, there are a couple options here you can open up. You can see all of the requests, or maybe you had initiated one and you canceled. You can always gain access to those project requests that are in other statuses using that little this little drop down here. Okay, and then I'm going to move to this last tab, this Contact Us. So as you saw, that add comment section is nice because it actually attaches it to a project request. If you have a generic question that maybe is outside of a project request, or you haven't submitted one yet because you're not sure which is the correct one, or there's just a general question, you can use this tab to ask your core that question here. It's pretty simple. Just type in your question, click submit, and it will go to the core. For any support help, so maybe it's something not core specific. Maybe you have a question about your account string, or doing some kind of step in iLab. There is a way that you can contact support directly from the iLab interface. So up at the very top right, there is this little help link all in capital letters. If I click on that guy, I could put in my topic, ask my question. If you have a screenshot of maybe what's going on, you can add an attachment. And then when you click Submit Ticket, it does open up a direct ticket to our support team. There are links down here if you want to view any open tickets that you've submitted, or maybe there's been a ticket that was resolved and closed that you want to pull up and reference. And then finally, the last thing that I think is really helpful, especially when you first start out in iLab, is there's a link up here at the top that says Access to iLab's help site here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. This will open up that help site in another browser tab. This has a couple different roles you'll see under Core Facility Management, and I'm going to look at Core Facility Customers. If you guys maybe have questions or just want to read through some articles, you can see there are some things that we have found are beneficial for you when you're first getting started. So how do I request a service? Maybe you don't remember the steps that we just went through. This is going to take you through those steps. A lot of these articles will have screenshots as well. This particular one, it looks like doesn't, but depending on how complex, actually it does. Maybe they're just not loading. Oh, sorry, my internet must be taking its time. So this will kind of walk you through, and there's a number of different articles in here. So if you're stuck on maybe even resetting your password, you can go ahead and there's quite a few in here. We're always updating these, and you can feel free to play around in this help site. I'm going to go back to my browser tab, and I'm going to close this little pop-up now using that gray X up in the top left-hand corner. And the last thing that I want to point out is there are a couple of links over here on the left-hand side. I want to first look at this home one with the little house. This is going to take us to our home page or our dashboard. What you're going to see here is a couple different things. So up at the top, I have this home section. Any of those email notifications that you get through iLab, you can not only view them in your personal email, but you'll also be able to view and archive them here. This service request section is going to give you kind of a high-level overview of what's going on. So I've got a couple different project requests in different cores, it looks like. I can see the price. I can see there's a portion, again, that little communications bubble if I need to add a comment. And then finally, scheduled events. This is going to show me any upcoming scheduled events. I can see I have that C-spinner one I created. I can see exactly when and that duration. And I can see the core hasn't approved it yet, so it's still pending my approval. But if I needed to delete it at this time before maybe I created it on accident, they haven't gone in and looked at it, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Before they even see it, I want to delete that guy because I don't need that. You can do that. And the nice thing about this homepage and this dashboard is this will show you all your work across cores. So if you're working with multiple cores, maybe I have multiple events, I would be able to see that list here. The other thing that I think is helpful, and this is not going to be the best example since I do have a test user here, but this core facilities link is basically when you guys are logged in as Penn State users, this is going to be a lot more exciting of a view for you. So what you guys are going to see is a list of all of the live cores at Penn State. So if you knew specifically you were looking for a proteomics core, you could find that in that list. It'll give you some general information on that, on contact, that kind of that primary contact, but it'll also give you the link directly to the core. Typically, your cores are going to give you the direct link themselves, but if for any reason maybe you misplaced that email, you can always pull that up here as well. Any questions? That's really, I think, from the customer perspective. That's the pretty much the bulk of what you need to know. Are there any questions, or did you guys want to see a portion again of it?
I have a question.
Sure.
Does the system send a reminder to the user that they made a reservation, that a reservation is coming up? So because one can make a reservation for today in advance or for next week, but then they may forget about it.
Yeah,
so,
excellent. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the cores will determine when that email, they have an option to send out those email reminders. It will depend on what they've set it for specific instruments. So maybe there might be one where, I think honestly the most common one that I've used with my cores is 24 hours before the reservation starts. That's when they usually set that email notification to go out. But in some situations, they've set it to go out sooner or later. So it does depend on the calendar and what the core has determined would be appropriate for that.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions?
I'm sure there will be a lot once we get started using it.
Sure. Yep. Well, as I mentioned, I really think this help site is excellent. So if you guys do feel free, once you get logged in, please feel free to poke around in there. I think it is very, very helpful. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope this was beneficial for you. And thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
1 second.
Oh, there's a question.
Another question? Sorry.
You also know for them.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Is this?
The kiosk.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Gosh, I keep forgetting, Misty. I don't have, let's see. I'm gonna go back to this core.
On the there's one.
I keep forgetting you guys have a couple of kiosk cores. I'm so sorry about that. Let me open that guy up. Okay.
Yep.
So, let me grab it from here. Okay, here we go. Oh, can you guys still see my screen? It looks like you should be seeing the kiosk. There might be a little bit of a lag. Is it showing up my kiosk sessions up at the top?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. GoTo gave me a notification. I was worried that it lost connection there. Okay, so this kiosk sessions screen that you're seeing, this is something that the core will give you this URL, this direct URL to their specific kiosk. And what this allows you to do is basically start and stop your time for any sessions that you have on pieces of equipment. So there are two ways that you could do this. One is if you have an upcoming reservation. So we can actually see that reservation I have for the C-spinner showing up here. Now, there is a setting that basically says when I'm allowed to start this. A day early is a little bit early, so we're seeing a details button. But if this was maybe, 30 minutes in advance and the core said, yep, that's fine, they can come in 30 minutes early, then I would see a start button here to actually start that reservation. The other option here is to just do a walk-up. So maybe I haven't created a pre-existing event. If the core has said, I would like to allow my users to walk up and just start using those pieces of equipment, you will see those categories and those instruments on the left-hand side here. So you'll notice when we were on that previous tab, we actually had two options underneath NanoFab, but the C-spinner is the only one that this core has said we are going to allow walk-ups in. So we're only seeing that one. So if I want to create a walk-up session on the C-spinner, you can see it does show up. It does show if there are any events. I'm wide open right now. We've got that little red dotted line to create our session. And then we have this green create session button down at the bottom. So I'm going to have the option to indicate my duration. Maybe I'm okay with 15 minutes, but you'll see there are some options here if I need a longer session. And then when I click this create session button, I am going to see a detail screen in here. So I have kind of a couple things here. I've got the scheduled time. This one does need approval. Let's generally, let me see if this Schedule A requires approval. I apologize, guys. Let's try this guy instead, because I'd really like to show you the full. There we go, perfect. So this one doesn't need approval. So I'm doing a walk-up on this Schedule A. I can see there is a start button. I'm not going to get to him quite yet. There is that payment information section, really similar to what we saw on the other pages. Again, this will be that drop down for you guys. The use and cost of reservation is going to give you some information, and if there are, again, different usage types, I can see those here. So maybe if this is self-use, for example. And then that notes section down at the bottom, this is going to work the exact same way as that event notes on the calendar screen that we saw. And I'm going to click save to save my little note here. If I'm ready to go ahead and start my session on this instrument, I can go ahead and click this start button in green. Okay, you can see the timer does start on the right-hand side, so I'm now being charged for my session. Now here's the important thing. If the core has maybe a shared computer or an iPad that they're having you log in to start and stop your sessions, I would strongly, strongly recommend remembering to click this log out and use equipment button, because otherwise someone can come up right behind you and they can start a session under your name and you're going to get billed for it. If you're just logging in on this on your smartphone, not such an issue. You can really leave the screen up the whole time, because I'm assuming most of you aren't going to have colleagues come up, grab your smartphones, and then start sessions on them. There is an option here to extend. So maybe if I scheduled 15 minutes and then I decided I get towards the end of it and that's not long enough, I need a whole nother hour, I can extend that session from here. And you can see the finish button when I'm done using the instrument. Over on the top right-hand side here, there is a drop down, and you can see one of them says My Reservations. That's going to take us back to that main page. We can now see that walk-up that we just created, that start time. It does give us an estimated duration of how long we have left. And there's a little clock icon that will give you more details as well, as far as, we estimate the end time being around 2:27. Once you actually finish your session, that information is going to update from 57 minutes left to the actual end time. So, for example, there's the finish button here. There is also a little downward triangle. Again, we can extend from here, or we can go back to that details page. I'm going to go ahead and finish my session. Maybe things went so well, they were really fast, and I don't need it any longer. You're going to see it changes to blue. I have that little clock again, and it actually tells me my session only lasted 2 minutes, 1:28 to 1:30. If you want to search for a specific resource, there is a search up here. So maybe I only want to see that Schedule A. I can start typing and it'll pull that up for me. And there's also this time scale up at the top. So this will show you events 24 hours in the future, but maybe that's a little bit too far in advance. I only want to see 7 hours in the future. I can see we have kind of 2 events coming up, and it got rid of my one for tomorrow. Okay. And again, if for any reason you needed to go back into that details screen, you do have that action button here that'll pull you back in and give you that information. You can see that log time does show up. All right. Any questions about Kiosk? No? All right. Misty, did I get everything? Is there anything else I'm forgetting to cover?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we're good this time.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you guys. Welcome to iLab, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Audrey.
My pleasure. Bye.